isn't the only angle on the show, as the building blocks were laid out for the whole Goldust Marlena interview with JR, where they're really going to quote unquote expose them as being Dustin Runnels. How do you remember that all coming together, where we had so much invested in this Goldust persona, and now we're going to take the paint off and we're going to quote unquote shoot, brother?
Not a fan of it. Never
like
have been a fan of it.
Okay.
I think that when you build a character and when you once you take the mask off that character and expose them, sometimes you're now creating another character, basically. Now you have to get the audience to know the real person, if you will. And that's another building block. So I'm not in favor of it. I'm not in favor of, Diesel being, tell me, Kev, about that time there in Eastern Tennessee when you played basketball. Who the fuck cares? I like Diesel. Goldust. Tell me, Dustin, I wanted to get lost in it. I wanted to get lost in Goldust and Marlena. If Dustin and Terry were that interesting, they would have come in as Dustin and Terry. But Goldust was able to get so much above that and to be this incredible character that intrigued audiences, and Marlena as well. Holy cow, man. They were great characters that the audience was into. So to me, it wasn't broken. So it didn't need fixing.
Let's talk about this same taping. We got Henry Godwinn and the Sultan being injured here. Ahmed Johnson ends up hitting the Sultan with a 2x4 and busts up his ribs. And Henry Godwinn took the Doomsday device and landed on his head. In hindsight, that Godwinn injury is super scary, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, both of them are. Anytime that those type of injuries happen, it sucks. It sucks for the competitor and it sucks for everybody.
Next up, we've got these Goldust segments that you talked about that you weren't really a fan of. JR is going to be discussing how Razor Ramon, who, as a reminder, is on the other channel now using his real name, Scott Hall, as part of the NWO, didn't want to work with the character. They also talk about Dustin's issue with his own father, Dusty, and whether or not the character's sexuality was questioned. Are you surprised that, because we're going to try this experiment again, not too long after this with Mick Foley, and I think Foley came out of it a much bigger star. I don't know that it worked that well for Goldust. Is that because the character was so well established as Goldust? Why don't you think it worked for Dustin the way it did for Foley?
Because I think that it had already been proven at that point that Dustin as Dustin Rhodes was not as colorful and didn't have the personality of a character like Goldust. And Goldust was able to bring out his personality and allow him to come out of his shell and be something larger. If Dustin were to get over as Dustin himself, then we would have brought Dustin in. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
I think that the Goldust character was so strong and Dustin portrayed it so well. Man, he was all in. And now when you take that off of him, it wasn't an alternate character. It was just him. Mick Foley was an alternate character. He had several characters that he could go in and out of using the body of Mick Foley.
Right.
And that in and of itself, Mick Foley was a character. So it's a completely different animal.